Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we're going to be discussing a few of the GameCube games that we missed from our GameCube episode last week, or our second GameCube episode last week, because we went through kind of year by year and picked out a bunch of games that we really liked. We missed some pretty important games, so we want to make sure that we touch on those. And then we're going to start talking about the Game Boy Advance.
Ooh.
So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I got a lot of memories of the Game Boy Advance. So
I do too. We have memories. All alone in the moonlight.
That's right.
Just like cats. Do you want me to get started on this thing?
Yes, I do.
Okay. First of all, big thanks to Matt in Japan for helping us out. He sent us an email and was like, you guys missed some. And I'm like, that's what we needed, because I wouldn't remember. So
thanks, Matt.
We're going to go. Yeah, thank you, Matt. We're going to go chronologically in order. 2001, Star Wars Rogue Leader, which is Rogue Squadron 2. Amazing.
No, that was a launch title that we missed.
Oh, yeah.
Too. And it was one of the ones that was always in the demos at the store. When you go to the store and you're like, I want to see what this GameCube thing is. It was always Rogue Leader.
Dude, I love this game. This is probably known as the best Rogue Squadron also.
Yeah, I think so. The last one is like Rebel Strike, Rogue Squadron 3, Rebel Strike, I think. And it's, as far as I know, it's pretty good too, but I think Rogue Leader is generally considered to be the superior title.
It's the best. Now, and then we got Pikmin 1, which came out at the same time as Super Smash Bros. Melee. This is a strategy game actually produced by Miyamoto, where you play as Captain Olimar, and you crash land on an alien planet, and then you befriend these plant-animal hybrid aliens called Pikmin, and then Olimar, or you, directs them to grab parts for your ship. The one thing about this game is you have to escape in 30 days, and if you don't do that, Captain Olimar runs out of life support and he dies. So it's kind of weird.
That's really dark.
Very dark. So I think you got to have like a time limit, and the time limit can be kind of a crunch at times, I think, especially if you're learning the game. So unless you don't play it perfectly the first time, you're probably going to have to replay it, I think. So I watched my friend play this game a lot, and it seemed very different.
It's like real-time strategy, but consoleized. You ordered like tons of Pikmin around. That was one of the things they used kind of as a tech demo for the GameCube too, was like, look at how many Pikmin we can have on the screen at once. And Nintendo 64 could never do this.
Yeah, look at all these crazy Pikmin. There were three kinds of Pikmin. There was yellow Pikmin who threw bombs. They were called bomb rocks. There were blue Pikmin who could go in water. And then there were red Pikmin, and those were the first type you found, and they were like super powerful, strong guys, and they were resistant to fire. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Into it. 2002, Phantasy Star Online Episodes 1 and 2. And it's one of the two games to use the GameCube modem, which I believe we talked about on our GameCube history episode.
Yeah, we talked about this game a bit when we talked about Dreamcast too, and it's more or less, it's the same game basically. This was at the time where Sega had given up on the Dreamcast and was like, well, what about these awesome Dreamcast games that people aren't going to get to play anymore? Let's get them over to like GameCube and PlayStation and stuff. So it was like Phantasy Star, Sonic Adventure 2. Let's get this stuff on the GameCube.
Get it on my GameCube. And then we had a Resident Evil remake. Never really played the first Resident. I bought the first Resident Evil remake for Nintendo DS, and then I sold it, and I should have kept the game because I think it's worth way more money now. It was very much not printed a lot. The Resident Evil for DS, one of those rarely printed games. Then Matt actually had a correction for us, which I'm happy to do this. It was Zelda Wind Waker came out on March 24, 2003, not 2002. I think we
dang it,
wrote a typo in there.
I think it came out 2002 in Japan.
Oh, maybe that was it.
But we've been very North America centric on this podcast, so that is a correction we should make.
That's true. We've been very North America centric. Sorry for everyone else in the world. 2003 Kirby Air Ride, which was essentially Kirby Surfing on Stars. It was a racing game, and it was capable of LAN connection.
Which means you could play it online if you use the super cool like warp pipe thing on your computer, which I don't think exists anymore, but you could play online by tricking your GameCube into thinking your computer was a GameCube when really it was talking on the internet to somebody else's GameCube.
Whoa.
Yeah.
GameCube's talking. It's like your GameCubes are talking in a chat room together, you know? They're going to meet each other. GameCube looking for GameCube to play Kirby's Air Ride. Soul Calibur 2, a multi-platform. It was on Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube. Now, each game had a special character. GameCube had Link, Xbox had Spawn, and PS2 had Heihachi, I think, from Tekken. And I played the Xbox version. And I gotta say, I played it with Spawn, but I thought the other characters in the game were cooler. I remember that. I remember renting this game.
Spawn is probably the least cool of the special characters.
Yeah,
Link obviously
is the
being the coolest. Yeah. It was like a more realistic, sort of like an upgraded version of like sort of what he looked like on Nintendo 64. So it wasn't the cel-shaded Wind Waker, which would have been coming out around the same time too.
Yeah, I think this game, I remember having a really fun single player mode, like a story-ish kind of mode, and that's what I played a lot. It was very fun. Okay, Beautiful Joe, which is part of the Capcom 5, which was an exclusive deal that was between Capcom and Nintendo, develop 5 games for the GameCube only. Like, these would be exclusive games. And those games were Beautiful Joe, PN03, I don't know what that is. Do you know
I think it's product number 3.
Oh, product number 3?
I think that's what it stands for.
Resident Evil 4, Killer 7, and Dead Phoenix. And of these games, only one of them remained exclusive, which was the PN3 one. Beautiful Joe, RE4, Killer 7 were all released on PS2 later, and Dead Phoenix was canceled, sadly. But in Beautiful Joe, you play as a guy named Joe, and you're watching a movie with your girlfriend, and then the villain from the movie reaches out and kidnaps your girlfriend. I don't know what it is.
You gotta go save her.
Yeah, with Nintendo and kidnapping girlfriends, I don't know why they're so into this, but it just happens all the time. And then the hero, though, then grabs Joe and sucks him into the movie and then teaches you to be a superhero, and then you go save your girlfriend. So that's the whole basis of the show. It's of the video game. What am I saying? It's a cel-shaded 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up that had these cool VFX powers. I watched a YouTube video of these, and you'd kind of like slow down time, or you'd do crazy combos, and when your VFX meter ran out, you'd become just normal Joe again, but you're in this like crazy fighting world, and then you have to like kind of recharge your superhero guy. It looks really cool, though. It seems like a really cool concept.
I've always remember hearing lots of good things about it, and I think there was a second one, and then the same director of it went on to make some more games for Nintendo consoles also.
Yeah, if I recall looking at the article I read on this, it also said it won, I think, GameCube Game of the Year when it came out. I think it was Electronic Gaming Monthly's award. So, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, and it's pretty much... The one thing I gathered about this game is that it didn't change that much from Mario Golf N64, as in they just added more courses and stuff, and the graphics were better, and it was criticized for it. They didn't really have a lot of new gameplay.
I have that game sitting on my shelf. I've never played it.
Oh, you should break it out. I loved the first Mario Golf for N64, but the premier Mario Golf is for Game Boy Color.
That's what I hear. It's like a RPG, almost like Golf Story for... Switch.
Yeah,
which is like an RPG more than a golf game.
It's really good. Like, I really, really liked it a lot. I actually remember playing it and then having it in a Game Boy Color that I let my friend borrow, and then he never gave it back. He lost it. Sad day.
Wow.
Yeah, real sad day. Star Wars Rebel Strike, which is Rogue Squadron 3, which is not as good as a 2. Actually, this is Matt's opinion. He says it's not as good as 2 because they had these on-foot missions. And I was like, I want to know what Matt's talking about here. And I went and I looked at a YouTube video, and he's totally right. Like, the only cool part of the off-ship mission is you have, like, that awesome orange jumpsuit that Rebel pilots wear. That's about it.
That's pretty cool.
Everything else about it, it's like you have this blaster that you can shoot guys with, but you can't aim it. You have to just point in the direction of the guy and hope it hits. Yeah, it seemed kind of not all the way finished. Do you want to do the next one? This is kind of right up your alley.
Yeah, well, in 2004, we got, and I meant to talk about this last week, and I just left it off the list because I forgot, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which was the first time that Square Final Fantasy game was on a Nintendo system since the Super Nintendo. Because remember, they skipped the Nintendo 64 when Nintendo was like, we're going to keep using cartridges. And Sony was like, hey, you want to put your sweet CG movies on CDs and play them on PlayStation? And Square was like, yes, we do want to do that. So Crystal Chronicles was a Final Fantasy game for the GameCube. It's not really like a proper Final Fantasy game in that the combat isn't turn-based. It's the RPG elements are pretty light. But the gist of it gameplay-wise was you were one of 4 people, and there's like a chalice thing that you have to carry around, and everybody has to stay inside this chalice, and one person has to be the person to carry the chalice. If you go outside the chalice, you take damage and stuff. It was pretty fun. The downside of it was it had a really cool multiplayer mode that like let other people be one of those other 4 people that you're playing with, but you had to have 4 Game Boy Advances and 4 link cables to link them up to the GameCube, or else you couldn't play multiplayer. That was the only way to do it, because I think they did some inventory management stuff on the Game Boy. But it's like a cool side story in the like Final Fantasy. So it's not in any particular Final Fantasy universe, I don't think. But it's a cool kind of like side Final Fantasy game. That's pretty fun. There was a sequel, I believe, that came out on the Wii later on. Crystal Chronicles
that's pretty neat.
And it's getting remade for the Switch soon, I think, which will probably make multiplayer a lot easier than having to have a bunch of Game Boys.
Yeah, that's true. That's a lot of Game Boys. You don't want to have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool.
Tales of Symphonia, and this is, in Matt's opinion, the best RPG on GameCube. I don't know anything about this, but it sounds epic.
It's pretty cool. It's got a cool real-time battle system, kind of a little bit side-scrolly, but it has a really neat, just anime art style. It's part of the larger like Tales series of games. So there's like Tales of Destiny on the PlayStation, Tales of Symphonia, Tales of there's a whole bunch of Tales games, but they're all
DuckTales?
pretty cool.
Is DuckTales related?
Is not DuckTales related. Completely separate.
Man.
But I would totally play DuckTales of Symphonia.
DuckTales of Symphonia. What a great theme song for a TV show.
Tales of Symphonia also got a sequel on the Wii as well, which is rare for a Tales game. I think Tales of Destiny maybe got a sequel, but the rest of them, I don't think any of the other ones have sequels. And there's games on the PS2, on the 360, PlayStation, PC now, so that's pretty
nice. Cool. By the way, we should mention that a cool part about you submitting your stuff to us is you get to put your own opinions in here, and we'll say them on the podcast. For example, Pikmin 2, Matt liked this more than Pikmin 1 because they took away that 30-day time limit, which seems pretty good. I don't like games, like, again, we talked about it with Majora's Mask. Yeah. Not a fan about games that time me.
Yeah.
You know? Not a fan. I don't want to feel that pressure.
Yeah, I don't want that stress. Unless if it's short bursts of being timed on things like that, I'm okay. But when the whole game is like, I could be losing hours of progress because I didn't play optimally. That's how I felt playing Final Fantasy 13-3 Lightning Returns. The whole game is on a similar like time thing where you have 13 days to do all the things. And in reality, it's actually a lot of time. It's plenty of time to get all the things done, or as many things done as you want. But man, there's always that like thought in the back of your head, like, am I doing this optimally? But not in a good way where you feel good about strategizing, just in a bad way where you just feel like you're choosing to miss out on things.
Oh, yeah. I get that. Anyway. I get that totally. Mario Power Tennis. I remember playing this game, I think, with some friends, and I was really bad at it, and it's embarrassing, and I want to move on.
All right. Beautiful Joe 2.
Beautiful Joe 2. A lot like Beautiful Joe 1, but even better because it's 2.
Yep.
Notes. Completed them. 2005, Resident Evil 4 came out for the GameCube. I remember this being a big deal.
I can't believe we missed this one too. This was a big deal because it was exclusive at the time, and it had been a while since there was a Resident Evil game, and it was like all new control scheme. It was really fun, and it was a little bit more third-person shootery, although it did still feel like a Resident Evil game, and the storyline was really cool, and it was really scary, and yeah, this was a big deal, and it had really good graphics too.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I remember actually watching someone play this on the Green Room GameCube that we had
in college.
In college, yeah. Someone had this. They brought it there. I think it was for a tech inside baseball. But yeah, I think this game's great. Killer 7 is, again, one of those Capcom titles that came out. Super Mario Strikers, that's like FIFA kind of, but with Mario characters, which I think is pretty cool. And I know there's some sort of mechanic with like power shots going on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching that. Geist. This game seems really cool. It was developed by N-Space, and it was an FPS, but then it became known as like an FP adventure, like a first-person adventure game.
Oh, kind of like how Metroid Prime, they kept trying not to call it a first-person shooter. It was a first-person adventure game. Yeah.
And so it was developed for the GameCube, and it's the second game on the GameCube to get an M rating, the first being that Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem game we talked about.
Oh, really? They didn't have any... Wait, Geist was... They didn't have any M-rated games before 2005?
Well, they had Eternal Darkness.
That's it? Really?
That's it. Yeah, they didn't really have any M-rated games. And this game was M, I think, because it was involving you possessing people, animals, and even objects as like a ghost. So they had that kind of demon stuff going on in there. Yeah, so I think it's like, ooh, demons, it's scary. We got to make this M because we're Nintendo and we're really afraid of like offending people or whatever. So
sounds spooky.
Sounds about right. Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix.
I love DDR.
You do?
I have this
I'm
game
so
too.
bad at it. I'm so bad at it. I wish I was better at it.
I spent a summer playing it, like summer 2004, after I first got my PS2. I spent a summer playing this game. I never got particularly good at it, but I did definitely like get better at it, and it was a lot of fun.
What if we became the best duos DDR team, you and I?
We could. Let's go to an arcade and just stomp on the pads there.
Stomp it out, and then we could do like cool hand motions where when we dance synchronously, we can like high five each other.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
It's like it'll be like that scene in Scott Pilgrim where he and his girlfriend are dancing and they like
exactly
jump
what
over
I
each
thought
other
of.
and stuff.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, because also I just watched that movie recently, like last week.
Oh, if you're a person who hasn't seen Scott Pilgrim versus the World, you are very fortunate because you get to watch it for the first time.
You know what I love about you, Tyler, is sometimes people would like immediately insult that person that hadn't seen it, but you were like, you're fortunate. That's good. Gosh.
Yeah.
Tyler Osby, pure force for good. Fire Emblem.
I do try to turn it around now, and when it was like, oh, you haven't seen that thing? I'm like, oh, man, you are so lucky because you get to watch it for the first time.
Yeah, that's right. Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance. This is the first Fire Emblem. Oh, wait, no, it's not. It's not the first Fire Emblem. It's the first time Ike was in Fire Emblem. I'm silly.
There's Fire Emblem games in Japan on the Super Nintendo. The Game Boy Advance had some over here. I don't know if the Super Nintendo ones ever came out in the United States, but the Game Boy ones did. GameCube ones did.
Aren't they trying to make one for iOS and Android?
Yeah, I think it's out.
Oh, it is out. Okay. Yeah, this is a very popular RPG.
Yeah, it's like it's a turn-based tactical RPG. So there's a lot of like kind of macro and micro chess going on, which is pretty cool. Very similar to like a Final Fantasy Tactics or
you know what game
XCOM.
I played a lot of actually, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it
we can talk about it
on this episode, or if we should save it for the next one, because this was the main game I played on Game Boy Advance. Also an RPG, Golden Sun.
Ooh.
Did you play this game?
Nope.
Okay, it's for Game Boy Advance, but it's probably like I either could go in the direction of Fire Emblem or Golden Sun, and I went in the direction of Golden Sun, and it was very fun. It's just like a very Final Fantasy-esque game that you play on Game Boy Advance, but I was real into it, and this just reminded me of it, and we're going to talk about Game Boy Advance now, and I'm just kind of like segueing right into it for you.
Oh, yeah. So, history of Game Boy Advance. Now, as far back as 1995, there were rumblings of a Project Atlantis that Nintendo had been talking about, which is supposed to be...
Is that when Miyamoto goes and finds the lost city of Atlantis?
Yeah, so that Miyamoto actually, he did the dive himself in the Atlantic Ocean to find Atlantis.
When Nintendo bought that submarine, I get it. I get what's going on here.
Right. So when he came back, he had Project Atlantis. I'm just kidding. Miyamoto never went, as far as I know, never went scuba diving in the Atlantic Ocean.
I like to think that 1% of our podcast is completely made up by us, and then they have to figure out which percent it is. You know, that's what I want them to be. That's what I want it to be.
We're going to have this episode cited in some Wikipedia article. It's like, Miyamoto dove to the bottom of the Atlantic by himself with no scuba gear. He was free diving.
He free dove, yeah, like a champion on a rope, like a badass. Love it.
But this Project Atlantis sort of seemed to be a successor at the time to like a Game Boy, or I guess it would have more been the Game Boy Color, even though the Game Boy Color would come out a couple years later. They actually confirmed this a few years ago that this project was designed to be more of a direct successor to the Game Boy and the Game Boy Pocket lines, but it never made it to market. It was not, contrary to popular belief, it was not the code name of the Game Boy Advance, which was codenamed, are you ready for this? Advanced Game Boy.
Whoa, that's like totally out there, man.
Yeah. So if you look on the back of your Game Boy, where you can always see the code name of whatever the project is, you will see that the model numbers are for the original Game Boy Advance is AGB for Advanced Game Boy, like how GameCube stuff was all Dolphin, DOL.
Oh, that's a neat little factoid. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can always kind of tell a little bit about what the code name is. But anyway, the Advanced Game Boy was the code name for the Game Boy Advance. But in the end, the Game Boy at the time was doing so well that they decided, let's save this Project Atlantis stuff. Let's just kind of scrap it for now. Let's put out the Game Boy Color, which was kind of a minor spec bump, and they gave it a color screen, and it was a Game Boy, but it had a color screen. It was a little bit faster.
I loved my Game Boy Color.
Oh, man.
I was purple, and I loved it like a sun. You know,
was it the see-through purple one?
It wasn't the see-through purple one. It was matte purple. But again,
Solid
I let
purple.
that friend borrow it, and he lost it. And I wish I had it to this day. I miss it. I miss it so much.
I had a teal Game Boy Color.
Oh, that's great.
That was the coolest one. I liked the lime one was cool too, the like bright green.
And they still take AA batteries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like if you have one now, you can still use it. Just put the new AA's in. You're fine.
Yeah, just fire it up.
I feel like the older ones with rechargeable batteries, that's where it gets kind of dicey because that battery's not working anymore.
Yeah. So Project Atlantis was scrapped, and then by the time that Nintendo was sort of clear to them that they needed a real successor to the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color line, they decided this Atlantis stuff that we did, it was cool, but it's not what we want to use anymore. So they decided to start over and work on the advanced Game Boy, or Game Boy Advance, which came out in North America in the summer of 2001. And I remember it vividly because I went to Best Buy on launch day, and both myself and my little brother picked up a Game Boy Advance, and I got a copy of Super Mario Advance, which was just Super Mario Bros. 2 from like the All-Stars remastering on the Super Nintendo. So it was like an enhanced version. I didn't know that's what it was going to be. That's what it turned out to be. It was fine. I was super stoked anyway. And my brother got F-Zero Advance.
That's really cool, and you guys could share?
Yeah, so we kind of traded back and forth. I ended up getting my own copy of F-Zero Advance at some point because I really liked it and we wanted to link up and race each other. So
that's a really fun idea to do as brothers.
Yeah.
Family. So, passed on.
I think Tony Hawk 2 was also a launch title. I'm not sure if I got it at the same time or if I got it like shortly thereafter. But Tony Hawk 2 was very different on Game Boy Advance than it was on like the PlayStation or the Nintendo 64. But it had this sort of isometric top-down view that like really worked for some reason, and the music was cool, and it really captured the essence of a Tony Hawk game, but in a handheld form, or what handhelds were capable of at the time.
Did it have Superman by Goldfinger? Because that's the only song I want to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
I don't think it did. It had a different soundtrack because it was all Game Boy sounds. It wasn't like an actual soundtrack. But it did have some memorable tune skis on the...
You know, I think I remember this game in the top-down thing you're talking about.
Yeah, it was really cool. And it really like felt like a Tony Hawk game. And I just played it all the time. And I got really sick of the music, even though it was really good music.
Well, I mean, this is one thing I know about you, Tyler. It's that you skate or die 100%.
That's right. I have not played very much of that game, Skate or Die, but
I have. I had it for NES, and it was really hard.
Okay, well, let's rewind a little bit and take a look at the specs of the Game Boy Advance. Now, when we talk about the Game Boy Advance specs, I think it's important to compare it with the Game Boy Color because this is what it was replacing. So, the Game Boy Color had an 8-bit processor made by Sharp based on the Zilog Z80, which was kind of a popular processor for computers in the 80s that was actually developed in the 70s. So it wasn't exactly a Zilog Z80, but it was very similar and it worked like a Zilog Z80.
Z80 is easily in my top 5 favorite microchips that start with the letter Z.
Yeah.
Easily.
What are the other 4?
The Zumba, the Zanzibar, the Zone, and the Zune, actually. The early Zune. The one before Microsoft Zune. Yeah.
Those are all great processors. That's the 1%. Those are all, those were in the ship that Miyamoto swam down to as well.
You know,
but they chose the Zilog Z80.
If I was a Nintendo console and you flipped me over, on the back of my thing, my code word would just say BS on it. That's all they would say.
Okay, so the processor made by Sharp ran at 4.19 megahertz for original Game Boy games because it was backward compatible, or if you were playing a Game Boy Color exclusive, it ran at 8.38 megahertz. Whoa. So you got double the speed if you were making your game only for Game Boy Color. And that's why a lot of games, especially towards the end of this console's lifespan, would come out and they would be exclusive to Game Boy Colors because you got a lot more horsepower inside that Game Boy.
I liked the box for the Game Boy Color games. It would just say that old Game Boy, and then it would have color and different, it looked like it was painted with marker. It was great.
Yeah. So it had 32K of RAM and 16K of VRAM. And it had an upgraded version of the sound chip in the original Game Boy, which is still widely considered to be one of the cooler sound chips. You can go online and find lots of chiptune music that's just people making music with the old Game Boy sound chip.
You know what's funny, Tyler? Our theme song, which was a free theme song, not theme song, but free is DRM free music that we could use from RoccoW was made on a Game Boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
The whole album that I pulled it from was made off of Game Boy. So there you go.
That's pretty cool. The Game Boy Color also had the same control scheme as the original Game Boy. So this is what we're comparing the Game Boy Advance to, is the Game Boy Color, this like basically souped up Game Boy. It was better than an original Game Boy, but like still pretty much the same thing, except it had a color screen. So it was a welcome upgrade for sure, and it had some exclusive titles like we talked about, but it still kind of feels like an extension to the older platform rather than a brand new platform all to itself. The GBA, on the other hand, was a brand new system. The GBA was a 32-bit processor, ARM-based processor, and as we know, at this point in the past, more bits is better.
Oh, yeah.
Full stop. More bits is better. But we are kind of reaching the end of that era where bits matter. But I do remember the box for the Game Boy Advance did have 32-bit written on it, so they at least cared a little bit in 2001.
So, yeah. People still thought about bits back then. Not anymore now, but back then, totally.
Yeah, for sure. So this was a 16.8 megahertz, 32-bit ARM-based processor. They also included the Zilog Z80 clone that's in the Game Boy Game Boy Color. They also included that mostly for backward compatibility sakes, because the ARM processor was not directly compatible with Game Boy Color executable code. So they included this. One of the cool things about including this chip was it allowed Game Boy Advance titles to access the sound hardware on this chip. So you could use both the Game Boy Advance sound hardware, which was pretty good in advanced sound hardware, but also you could use the Game Boy Color sound hardware. So if you wanted to have like extra super cool stuff that used Game Boy Color sound too, you could.
Whoa,
as a
that's
developer.
cool.
So that's neat. It had a higher resolution screen than the Game Boy Color. It was 240 by 160, which is a 3:2 ratio, which is coincidentally the exact same ratio as the Apple iPad. So basically, in terms of the width and height ratio, your Game Boy Advance screen is the same as an iPad. It has not as many pixels as an iPad, though. It had 32 kilobytes plus 96 kilobytes of video RAM. I'm not sure what that means. That was internal on the CPU. And then 256 kilobytes of DRAM outside of the CPU. That's from Wikipedia. I'm not really sure what it means. But more importantly, they added 2 buttons to the Game Boy control scheme, an L and R button on the top of the console.
I loved me the L and R buttons.
Which was important for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 because that's how you did grabs and flips.
Ooh.
When you're playing a Game Boy or a Game Boy Color game, those same buttons would alternate between stretching the screen to fit the wider format of the Game Boy Advance screen or keeping it in the narrower Game Boy Color version.
I remember doing that.
Yeah, never stretch it. Just don't.
That's a really fun memory. Yeah, I was like, what is that? What did I do? Oh, put it back. Okay, good. Because, you just have those black letterbox things on the side if you just use it in normal mode, which I liked better.
Yeah, I like that better, too, because it wasn't stretched then. But the GBA was compatible with all Game Boy games, even though they looked kind of weird sticking out at the top of the Game Boy Advance, because Game Boy Advance cartridges were about half the height of an original Game Boy game. Same width, but about half the height. So when you plugged in an older Game Boy cartridge, it kind of stuck out the top and looked weird.
Yeah, I remember that. Definitely remember that. Yeah. I would still play Pokemon Red on my GBA. And it would look weird. Yeah.
Overall, if the Game Boy Color could be roughly compared to the NES, and it got a few NES ports. I remember there was a Super Mario Deluxe, like it was just basically a port of the original Super Mario Brothers. So if the GBC was basically an NES, the GBA was basically a Super Nintendo, which was pretty neat considering that the Nintendo 64 was still the latest Nintendo console out at the time of the Game Boy Advance's release. Because remember, it came out in summer of 2001, and the GameCube would come out in the fall, winter, November of 2001. So there was a summer of Game Boy Advance being out before the GameCube was out.
Probably a great summer of kids just staying inside all day. Beautiful. Love it.
That's what I did.
That's what I did too.
I stayed inside and played my Game Boy Advance. I do remember taking my Game Boy Advance on a school trip at the end of the year to the water park that no longer exists in my hometown. And I was really cool that day because I had a Game Boy Advance and I let other people play my Game Boy Advance.
You know how we could be really cool, Tyler?
How could we be really cool?
If you and I just drop everything we're doing and reopen that water park in your hometown.
We'll have to buy the used car dealership that is currently. on
Just
the
put
lot.
some slides on the roof and put a hose going down. We're good.
Yeah, but it was so that's pretty neat. I think Nintendo really capitalized on the capabilities of the GBA in this regard. A lot of the best GBA games were just ports of Super Nintendo games. Like every Super Mario Advance game is just ports of Super Nintendo games. There was a port of the Super Nintendo version of Super Mario 2, a port of Super Mario World, a port of Super Mario Brothers 3, but the Super Nintendo version of Super Mario Brothers 3, and then there was a port of Yoshi's Island.
I will say that currently in my Game Boy Advanced SP in my room is a copy of Super Mario World.
Wow. Well, there you go.
It is,
that was one of the best games on the Game Boy Advance. And nobody was mad about rebuying their games because playing Super Nintendo games in your pocket was pretty sweet at the time. There was, I remember just being stoked of like, whoa, a Super Nintendo in my pocket. Wow. The next Game Boy will be able to play Nintendo 64 games, which was kind of true when the DS would come out.
I still bust it out every once in a while and play some Super Mario World. I love it.
Yeah, game's great. There were a lot of other games on the Game Boy Advance, and we'll touch on these when we talk about Game Boy Advance games. But they weren't like technically ports of Super Nintendo games, but they felt like Super Nintendo games. Like F-Zero Advance was a different game from F-Zero on the Super Nintendo, but it felt very similar. And then Mario Kart Super Circuit felt very much like a combination of Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart 64, which was pretty neat. So that's kind of the hardware of the original Game Boy Advance. What I want to touch on now is the redesigns, because Nintendo is no stranger to console redesigns. Remember, the NES and the Super Nintendo both got smaller versions made, like smaller redesigns. And the Game Boy had like the Game Boy Pocket, and generally these were just size reductions with maybe some slight upgrades. The Game Boy Pocket definitely had a better screen than the original Game Boy did. The NES top loader redesign actually got rid of some features because it no longer had composite out. You could only do RF out to your TV, which is kind of interesting. They actually got rid of the composite out.
That is a weird choice.
I think you can do some modifications to it to add that back, but you got to do it yourself. Anyway, the GBA is where they really went hard on re-releasing the hardware, but with advanced features. So the first redesign of the Game Boy Advance was the Game Boy Advance SP, also known as the AGS-001. So Advanced Game SP. I don't know. The codename thing doesn't really work for the Game Boy Advance SP, but I thought it was interesting.
That is cool, though. AGS-001.
Yeah. And that's important because there would be an AGS 101, which is what I'll talk about in just a second.
Ooh, foreshadowing.
But the first hardware redesign of the GBA, the Game Boy Advance SP, returned to the vertical form factor that was familiar to folks who used the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color. So it was buttons were below the screen instead of to the side, and but they changed it up and they made it have this cool clamshell design, which was popular with like higher end cell phones at the time, where if you had a flip phone, you were like really cool in 2003 or 2002 when this came out. I think it was 2003. It was cool because it sort of protected the screen and it made the device overall much smaller than the original Game Boy Advance. And the cartridges loaded from the bottom and they still stuck out if you were playing original Game Boy games. They went a couple of steps further and they added something they hadn't ever had on a handheld released in the United States. They added a front light to the screen. So the Game Boy Light in Japan had a lit screen, but Nintendo never released that in the US. So this was a huge usability upgrade because players no longer had to play by the light of the street lamp when driving at night. And I know you know that pain. I know that pain trying to play in the car when you're driving home, playing by street lights.
So bad.
Yeah. And it was, it's just terrible. But you never had that problem anymore because you had a front light on your Game Boy Advance, which was pretty sweet. So it made it
also, Tyler, real quick, while you're explaining this to the listener, I'll still be able to hear you. I'm going to go grab my Game Boy SP. It's right over here, okay?
Okay.
And we're going to see if it's a 101 or an 01 in real time.
Okay.
Isn't this exciting?
Go grab it.
Okay, I'll be right back.
So having a front light basically meant that you could more easily sneak in some late night Pokemon sessions under the covers without having to hold a flashlight at an awkward angle, which obviously I never did. I totally promised Mom I never did that. I definitely went to bed on time, didn't stay up too late, ever. Another thing that they added to the Game Boy Advance SP was a rechargeable battery, which was still kind of a novelty, I feel like, in the early 2000s. Most devices were still you're still swapping batteries. I think cell phones at the time probably were the most common thing with a rechargeable battery. But it was pretty sweet because it meant you didn't have to spend money on AA batteries anymore. it also had the side benefit of they had to include a wall plug with it, an AC adapter in the box, because otherwise how else are you going to charge it, which meant that if you were just sitting at home on the couch, you could play your Game Boy without having to worry about batteries at all, because you could just plug it straight in.
Oh, which is definitely how I play now, because I think the battery on this thing is shot. Just want to let everyone know, the listeners, I'm looking at the back of my Game Boy Advance SP. I'm holding it up to the screen too, so Tyler can see it. But it's the Nintendo one. And
the NES one?
It's the NES style looking one, and it's an AGS 001, so it's the first model.
So it's the front light.
Yeah, front light, back light. It looks pretty cool, though. It's got like the old controller on the inside of it. Yeah.
Pretty cool. It has a really satisfying click when it opens, too.
Oh, yeah. Here you go. Ready? Oh, did you get that? I don't know if we went there. Oh, yeah. It's really great, though. I like it a lot.
Yeah, super, super great.
It's fun because we're not running into systems that we have in our rooms.
I know. I could probably. I think mine's still at my parents' house, but yeah. So it was pretty cool.
We can link cable. We got a link cable.
I know. But yeah, it was pretty cool because it could plug into the wall. You could buy wall plugs for older Game Boys too. They had a DC in jack, but you had to buy it separately, and there wasn't a whole lot of reason to do it other than you just didn't have to use batteries anymore. But anyway, it was pretty cool. Nintendo also beat Apple to the party by nearly a decade and a half because the SP, Game Boy Advance SP, got rid of the headphone jack.
Whoa, I didn't even notice that on mine.
Check that thing out. See a headphone jack on there anywhere?
There's no headphone jack.
Nope. Because you had to buy an adapter that plugged into the same port as the charging port, which is the same way Apple does it now, which I think is pretty hilarious.
That is so kooky. I never even noticed it.
Yep, because nobody played their Game Boy with headphones. Most people played it without sound at all.
I would always play it without sound usually. Especially, you know what I just noticed about this thing? Sorry, listener, that you can't see this and I'm just talking about it. It's got a really cool finish on the inside of it that like feels kind of like a skateboard deck.
Oh, almost like the original NES controller, probably.
Yeah, it feels really cool. And the speaker is in the middle of the gamepad, which is pretty cool.
Making sure you're not going to miss any sounds.
Yeah, when it's true, though, it's so funny how I think I played my Game Boy, and I would say about 80% of the time the sound was off.
Yeah, me too.
Easily, because you're just in the car, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your parents don't want to hear the repetitive music.
Did you ever get car sick playing a Game Boy?
No, I didn't. I never got car sick as a kid, but I do get car sick now if I'm reading comics and riding in a car.
See, because I never got car sick either, and I feel like we're lucky ducks in that way. You know what I mean?
I think so.
That could have really killed our Pokemon time.
Yeah, and I played a lot of Pokemon in the car, that's for sure.
Oh, me too. But still do. We do sometimes on the way to San Diego.
Yeah, so the GBA SP still played any game the original GBA played, so you could play Game Boy Color games too. It got its own mini redesign when Nintendo released the AGS 101, which was a version of the SP that included a backlit screen, which is different from the frontlit screen of the original Game Boy Advance SP. You can definitely tell the difference when you look at them side by side. One of them looks way better than the other, and it's the newer one. It looks really good. It's super bright. If you are buying a brand new Game Boy Advance SP for some reason and you want to know which one is in the box, the ones with the better screen have a thing on the front that says newer, brighter screen. And it was a pretty big upgrade because the screen would be more evenly lit. The colors popped out a little bit better. More like a traditional backlit LCD rather than a front-lit one. So that was pretty cool. The other redesign, which came out, I think it came out after the Nintendo DS came out, Nintendo released the Game Boy Micro.
Oh, I've never even heard of this.
Oh man, it was super small. It's like, it basically practically fits in the palm of your hand. It was tiny, and it returned to that horizontal layout of the original Game Boy Advance. So you had your D-pad on the left side, A and B buttons on the right side, and it had the same backlit screen as the second Game Boy Advance SP release.
It's got to be so tiny. Just looking at a picture of it. Like, so the bottom part of it, almost the entire width of the bottom is the cartridge.
Yeah, this thing was like marginally wider than a Game Boy cartridge. Like there's a little bit of extra. Because remember, it's horizontal instead of vertical, so there's a little bit extra room. So it is wider than a Game Boy Advance SP, but much, much shorter. This thing was pretty tiny. I think it was marketed more towards kids that had like smaller hands, and it was, just super, super small. It did have a little bit of a downside. It couldn't play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, only Game Boy Advance games. So this was probably a cost-saving measure on Nintendo's part. It did still have that Game Boy Color processor in it because some Game Boy Advance games used that for sounds, but it lacked a bunch of other important components to make backward compatibility a possibility. It also had a redesigned link port, which required adapters if you wanted to use your older stuff, and some accessories just straight up wouldn't work with the Game Boy Micro. It was kind of a last ditch, like it was after the DS had come out. They were like, okay, here's our last redesign. It's cheap. Buy it for your kids. You're not going to get to use everything. That's fine. We don't care.
All right. This is the part of the show where I do my classic, how much does a Game Boy Micro go for on eBay right now?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to take a guess?
How much is a Game Boy Micro? Right now, $40. Like for a decent condition.
For a decent condition Game Boy Micro. Oh, man. It's a little more expensive than you think.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. For this used one, there's here, let me just go to the one, like when you just Google it, like on the front page of Google, Game Boy Micro eBay, 2 of them pop out that have games that come with them, and those are $200.
Holy moly, no way.
Just the system, a used Game Boy Micro Black Maker end of production, $128.99.
Wow,
and that's
they must
used.
be collector's items at this point.
I think so, then. Yeah, they gotta be.
Maybe there must not be very many of them because it came out so late. That must be it.
Yeah, I could see especially like parents doing that thing where they're like, well, I'm just gonna, oh wait, well actually never mind. I found some now that are like $69.99 and $47.
Well, okay.
Maybe people are just charging way too much for theirs. I don't know. This was an orange edition.
That's cool.
$69.99. Yeah, I think I could see parents just buying their kid a DS being like, well, this is newer.
And it plays Game Boy Advance games too.
Yeah, and so they'll just buy that for their kid and then thinking they can just keep buying games for it, which is true. The Nintendo DS had a really long life cycle.
Yeah, it did. Totally did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there.
Good stuff.
The last thing I want to say about the Game Boy Micro is that they added the headphone jack back. So they listened to people being mad about it and they put it back. Possible foreshadowing for what cell phone manufacturers are going to do in the future? I don't know. You decide. I bring you the facts. You make the decision.
Mike,
you actually make the decision.
You'll have to find out next week on Codex. That's not true. We're not ending right here. Sorry, Tyler. Keep going.
The last segment about the Game Boy Advance that I want to touch on is some of the more notable accessories for it. Perhaps the most unique and coolest one that I also had was the e-reader, which plugged into the cartridge slot, and it also plugged into like the link cable slot, and it had the ability to swipe cards with like a barcode on them. And so you would go like to the store and you would like buy a pack of cards that was like, it would have a whole NES game on it or something, and you have to swipe like 8 cards, and it was so cool because you're like, oh yeah, I'm swiping these 8 cards. And then you got to play your game. The Game Boy Advance had the ability to, I think, maybe I'm not exactly sure how this worked now with the, you could use it to unlock things in games too. I know you could get extra levels for Super Mario Advance 3 or Super Mario Advance 4, I think. Whatever one that was Super Mario Brothers 3, you could unlock extra things. I don't know if you had to like link a Game Boy Advance, like 2 Game Boys together or what. Actually, that would be worth exploring. We can talk about that next episode because I'm not exactly sure how that worked.
We can figure that out next episode.
Yeah, but it was pretty cool. You could also unlock certain accessories on like GameCube games too. So like Animal Crossing had some things you could unlock. You could buy cards packs from the store that would have things that you could unlock that you would. So you'd have to buy you'd have to have a GameCube, you'd have to have Animal Crossing, you'd have to have a Game Boy Advance link cable, you'd have to have a Game Boy Advance, and you'd have to have a Game Boy Advance e-reader, and then you could unlock sweet new clothes for yourself in Animal Crossing. Just accessories on accessories on accessories.
To do it though.
Oh, for sure, 100%. Yeah, I can think of several people in my life that probably did that. The next cool accessory was the wireless adapter, which was kind of supposed to.
This, by the way,
it's neat. it was supposed to replace the link cable, but it wasn't actually compatible with link cable games. So in order to make use of this wireless adapter that sort of clipped onto the top of the Game Boy, you had to be playing games that used it. The most notable games that used it were Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. They actually came bundled with it at first when they first came out. They came with this thing, and it was like a way to trade Pokemon wirelessly, which is pretty neat. But not that many games. There were fewer than 20 games that supported this. So it was kind of a niche product, but if it came with the game that you were buying, why not? Pretty neat.
Yeah, maybe you got a buddy that's got Leaf Green. You have Fire Red, you can trade.
Yeah, without having to have a link cable. That's pretty neato. Next one, GameCube link cable plugged into your Game Boy Advance and then also plugged into your GameCube controller port, and it allowed your Game Boy Advance to communicate with GameCube games. So there were some games that used this for multiplayer, like you could use a Game Boy Advance as a controller, like Crystal Chronicles, Four Swords Adventures also did this. Some games would just link up and they would just unlock something like Metroid Prime. If you beat Metroid Prime and linked up your Metroid Fusion game, you unlocked a thing. And if you beat Metroid Fusion and you hooked it up to Metroid Prime, you got a thing. I think you got the Metroid Fusion suit in Metroid Prime, which was pretty cool for one of those things. Cool. Yeah, it was pretty neat. There were some other games that also did similar things. There were some games that you didn't actually have to buy another game in order to be able to use it. Like Crystal Chronicles was like this. You didn't have to, there was not a Game Boy game, corresponding Game Boy game to buy. You just plugged your Game Boy into your GameCube and then it would like boot up off of the GameCube, which was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I remember Animal Crossing had a little like pixel art thing that you could do to like design your own t-shirts and stuff that you had to have on the, I think you had to have a Game Boy to do it. Maybe not. Maybe you could do it in game, but it was kind of cool. And then the last accessory, kind of just type of game, I guess, was the Game Boy Advance Video, which were cartridges that you could buy that would contain whole episodes of TV shows. Like there's a lot of Nickelodeon shows, like SpongeBob SquarePants. I think there were some Rocket Power episodes. I know for sure there were some Pokemon episodes.
Goodness, I love Rocket Power. I was such a fan of that show. So good.
Yeah. So you could watch it on your Game Boy Advance, and I think they come with like an episode or two on these cartridges, and they looked like garbage even on the Game Boy Advance. But funny thing about these cartridges is they don't play on the Game Boy Player, which is, remember, the Game Boy accessory that plugs into the bottom of GameCube that lets you play Game Boy Advance games on your TV, basically. You couldn't put these, they wouldn't play on a Game Boy Player on purpose because Majesco was worried that people would pirate like Game Boy Advance video games or these cartridges. They were like, you'll record it to a VHS tape or a DVD, which is crazy because these games, I'm saying with like air quotes, these video cartridges looked like garbage. They totally were not worth buying at all.
Oh yeah. Are you ready for the movies they had? I found some movies they had.
They had some movies?
Video. They had Shrek,
Shrek
2, Shark Tale. Then you could buy Game Boy Advance Video Movie Pack, 2 movies in 1 with Shrek and Shark Tale. They had some good ones though. They had Adventures of Jimmy Neutron. They had Ed, Edd and Eddy, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Johnny Bravo.
Oh, okay, so some Cartoon Network stuff.
They had a lot of Cartoon Network stuff, it looks like. They had some Lilo and Stitch, Kim Possible, Disney stuff. Dragon Ball, popular. I'm looking to see, it was a lot of animation. I wonder if it's because the animation just looked better.
It did. Live action stuff, like animation didn't look great either, but that animation tends to compress easier than live action stuff. And these cartridges were heavily compressed.
Well, they had Yu-Gi-Oh! But what's weird is they had Yu-Gi-Oh! Volume 1 that included parts 3 and parts 4 of an episode series, which makes no sense at all. So no wonder no one bought these.
But yeah, and you couldn't watch them on your TV, on your Game Boy Player, because they were worried that somebody would record this terrible video file to a VHS tape, because nobody had DVD burners at the time or a way to record something from a GameCube onto a DVD.
Tyler, would you want to watch a VHS movie I burned off of a Game Boy that looks really, really bad?
I would not. No, yeah. I would say there's a better use of my time.
That's probably how most interactions went, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a neat thing. Overall, game would just to sort of wrap it up. Overall, my view on the Game Boy Advance was it was a pretty big leap from the Game Boy Color in terms of hardware capabilities, and there were a lot of games that utilized that power. Remember, we talked about all those Super Nintendo games and games that were similar to Super Nintendo games. It was still just kind of an incremental step, though. It was kind of the next logical place for handhelds to go after the Game Boy Color when you compare it to something like the DS, which came out only 3 years later, which I find kind of crazy that it only took 3 years for the DS to come out.
Jump.
Yeah. So the DS was a true like next leap, like with 2 screens, it was like really doing something different. But the Game Boy Advance had a lot of great games, which we'll be talking about next episode, I suppose. I personally have some great memories with the system. It was the first handheld that I saved up for and bought with my own money. At this point in my life, my video game habits had become, I don't want to say excessive, but it was definitely clear that this was like a hobby or a thing that I really wanted to do. My parents were not super on board with my video game. They didn't like actively stop me as long as it wasn't like keeping me from doing things, but they weren't buying me games at this point. They were like, he's got enough games. If he wants more, he'll buy them himself. They were much more interested in buying me books and stuff like that. So this was a big deal to me.
And feeding you.
Right. That's
caring
right.
for their son.
Right. And I had great parents. I love them both. But I did buy this with my own money and it felt great. Cause I was.
Was it Wendy's money?
No, it wasn't. I was 11 years old.
Oh,
so this was not high school.
Wait, you're in the Tri-Cities of Washington where you grew up. They didn't have child labor Wendy's?
They did not have child labor Wendy's in 2001 in the Tri-Cities.
Okay. No. I must have made a mistake then. Okay.
Yeah. Those are in other places, I guess.
Yeah, easy mistake to make probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of where I started to go independent with my video game purchasing habits, which is kind of fitting because it was a portable handheld, which you play on the go, independent from your TV and from being at home. So, yeah, that was
sometimes you play them at water parks and impress people.
That's right. Sometimes you play them at water parks and you're the cool kid for a day.
My experience with the Game Boy Advance is I had moved down from Alaska to Auburn, Washington, and I went back up for a trip to go see my best friend. And my best friend, I'm pretty sure, ended up being like gone or on vacation, I think. And so my mom bought me a Game Boy Advance and I just played, how I played this. I played it so much. It was pretty great. I'm trying to think. I think I got Golden Sun. And that game, we'll talk about Golden Sun next episode, but it's a pretty big, long RPG. Or at least it felt that way when I was a kid. Like I played a lot of that game. So
I think we
can talk about the next episode. But yeah, it was real great.
Yeah, I love my GBA. Played a lot of it with my little brother. We had a link cable and we would race F-Zero and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I'm kind of ashamed I got rid of my GBA original. And I mean, I think I ended up getting this Game Boy Advance SP from a friend later, but I don't have any of my games left. I only have a couple Game Boy Color games I've found, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But I think one of them is Pokemon Red, which is cool.
Nice. That is cool. So,
hey, but Tyler,
anyway,
what you been playing?
I've been playing a lot of Destiny. As always, we should just start a Destiny podcast because I could talk about Destiny for a while.
That's true. We totally could.
I'm trying to think about what I played this week because last week I had played Spider-Man, but I didn't play any more of that. Really, I've just been reading Spider-Man comics. It's really what I've been doing this past week.
I mean, you are a full-on Spider-Head right now.
Yeah, I'm going real ham on some Spider-Man, some Spider-Ham on Spider-Man.
Aha.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm like looking around to see what's in my... No, I think that's it. I think I've just been reading Spider-Man comics and playing Destiny. A lot of Destiny.
I tried something new. I played Rocket League solo.
What?
1-on-1. And the first couple, I've won 2 out of the 3 games.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where I don't think it was my doing that I won. It's like when you only have 2 people playing against each other, it's like one hit, and if a lot of people whiff, like the two of it's going wherever it's going to go. That's kind of where it was. But it was fun. I had fun playing that, and then I finally started playing Red Dead again.
Nice.
But I've heard I actually have a lot more to go than I thought.
Oh, dang it.
Like there's some epilogue stuff going on. I think there's multiple epilogues in Red Dead Redemption 2 is what I'm hearing.
Oh.
Not to spoil anything, but just saying it's a long game, which I don't think is a spoiler. I think everyone knew that. So
yeah, it's very long. The first one was pretty long, and I think this one is way longer.
Yeah, I played Red Dead Redemption 1 up until the epilogue, and I kind of stopped like, okay, I played through the whole story. Now I know what's going on. And I heard there was a little bit more left, but I was just like, I'm just going to stop for now, figuring I'd come back to it.
You never went back to Red Dead 1?
I beat the part Okay, can we just say spoilers right now?
Spoiler, 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 spoiler.
Okay, John Marston died. And then you become his kid. Yeah. And then I stopped playing.
Oh, you missed out. There's a lot of good stuff there, dude.
There's a lot of good stuff there?
There's at least you got to get to the final bit. You got to do it.
Okay, I'll go back. It's on my Xbox 360 still. It's still on.
It's not very much. There's not a lot more. But
actually,
you're
it's not
definitely
on my 360. It's on my Xbox One. I played it on Xbox One because I was like, man, it runs smooth on Xbox One.
Yeah.
All right, you know what?
You got to do it.
Maybe when I'm done with Red Dead 2, I'll just go back and play a little Red Dead 1 and just finish it out.
Yeah, you don't have much more.
Okay, good to know.
So, all right, and spoilers. I don't know how somebody's going to find that part, but...
Yeah, maybe we'll just put in the notes as a Red Dead Redemption spoiler in there. I don't know. That'll work for me. But anyway.
I mean, it is almost 10 years old, so.
That's true. I don't think it's our fault anymore at this point. And also, you said spoilers 4 times very loudly. And it gave people a lot of time to turn it off.
Yeah, so. I think as long as you give proper warning, it's not just jump into spoiler territory immediately, but it is a 10-year-old game just about, so, I mean,
our spoiler cast comes out pretty soon, though. It's about spoilers from everything, from movies to TV to food, like what food's spoiling in our fridge. Just everything spoils. All spoils all the time.
All of the things I'm buying for my dog, because she's very spoiled.
She is very spoiled, Toby, also, the cat.
Yep. I'm buying a lot of car accessories to make sure my car does not fly off of the ground.
Oh, a spoiler.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like it. I like what you're doing. I like what we're doing right now. This is really great.
It's late. It's late at night when we're recording a podcast.
I was already pretty out there this episode, so this is going to be a fun one. As always, you can rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. That would mean the world to us. Also, we got 2 new ratings on the iTunes Apple page thing, and so thank you for doing that. And I don't think there's any reviews that go with them. They were just ratings, but we appreciate you for doing that. Regardless. Yep, we have 14 ratings now.
Nice.
So big thanks to all you people out there. I'm just double checking to make sure I didn't miss any. Nope, no new reviews, just ratings, which is totally fine. So thank you for doing that to unnamed people I can't see.
I want to say thank you to Matt again in Japan who sent us his GameCube list. Really appreciate that.
Our sweet, sweet angel Matt. Thank you for that. That means the world to me. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did, and it was nice. Also, if you want to tweet at Tyler, you can go to @SneakerElf, ELPH on Twitter. You can find me at @MeColetta. You can also email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com, which is what Matt used to give us his info, which is great. You can do that. You can be like, hey, dum-dums, you messed up. Say this thing, and I will. That's how it works.
Yep.
Because
Mike will say anything you tell him.
Tyler and I are in charge of the podcast, but really, you guys have all the power. That's how it is. So with that, I'm Mike Cloud. Thank you so much for listening. You want to say bye, Tyler?
Yeah, bye, Tyler.
This has been a Podaholics Comedy Network presentation. Podaholics.com